Hey guys, Endless here, welcome back to the channel. This is part 3 of What If Deku Trained Like Garou. Also check out the other videos on my playlist. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy. Izuku rubbed the side of his neck as he walked inside of UA. He then thought back to yesterday on how after the fight some black-haired girl told him what the silver-haired boy did wrong. I only wanted a good fight. As he muttered this though, he bumped into someone. Izuku looked down at the girl and spoke. Oh shit. He quickly helped the girl up and noticed she was the same girl that was next to him on the entrance exams. I'm sorry, I wasn't looking at where I was going, Izuku stated with a feral grin. The girl looked at him and gave him a small smile. No, it's fine, I wasn't looking at where I was going either. She then continued while staring at his eye curiously. What's your name, if you don't mind me asking? I wanted to ask you during the exams, but you left to the changing rooms pretty quick. Izuku had noted that she sounded amused at that, but he quickly responded. My name is Izuku Midoriya, and what might yours be? The girl smiled and walked past him, but as she did, the pink-haired girl spoke up. My name is Mei Hatsum. I hope we can meet again. And with that the girl walked to her class. Izuku just stared at her retreating form, but that's when someone put their arm over his shoulder. The silver-haired boy was about to shove it away, but then that's when Katsuki spoke. Damn, not even 2 days and already 2 girlfriends. The blonde then continued. I'm kind of jealous, all of the girls in middle school were just too scared to talk to you. The silver-haired boy raised an eyebrow at him and spoke as they were walking to class. Girls liked me during middle school. He questioned the blonde. Said blonde just hummed in affirmative. As Bakugo did this, the duo already made it to their classroom. Izuku and Katsuki walked over to their seats, and after a minute or so, the class was filled up, and that's when Aizawa chose to wake up. He stood up and stared at his students, then turned his gaze onto Izuku. I know you like to fight, but don't forget the mission you have been assigned when you're facing off against villains. The silver-haired boy just nodded in agreement. Aizawa then spoke up. Alright, you all have to choose a class rep and vice rep. After he said this, everyone cheered, but Shota activated his quirk and made everyone go silent. He then muttered. Good, now you all have until lunch to choose a class rep and do it however you want. After he said this, Aizawa went into his cocoon once again. Once he did so, Tenya stood up and spoke to the class. Everyone, we should put this to a vote. The students stopped their yelling and stared at him. Kaminari then spoke up after a moment. Wouldn't we just vote for ourselves? The Pikachu questioned. After Tenya had heard this, he moved his glasses up and replied. Then whoever got the most votes deserves the position. The blue-haired boy then walked over to his bag and started handing everyone a paper to write a name on. After he was done, Tenya sat down and started to write his own vote. The silver-haired boy stared at Tenya for a moment, then looked back at his paper. He grinned and wrote his answer. 3 minutes later, Tenya and Momo stood up and collected the papers from the students and walked over to the front of the class. The blue-haired boy then went through the papers, and after he counted the votes up, he walked over to the board and wrote the names that had more than 1 vote. Tenya Lita 4 votes. Izuku Midoriya 3 votes. Momo Yaoyorozu 2 votes. Once Izuku saw this, he stood up and shouted. All right, who voted for me? I know I didn't. After he said this, Mina shouted back towards him. I did. Said girl giggled once she saw his confused face. But why? Izuku stated after he calmed down. However, that's when Bakugo spoke up. Because they did now stop complaining and go up there. As he said this, the blonde shoved Izuku towards the front of the class. The silver-haired boy glared at his friend and muttered. I'll remember that. As he said this, Izuku was now standing next to Tenya and said boy spoke up. I am honored for your faith in me, I will do my best. Izuku just stared at him and then he turned his gaze towards the class. Yeah, same with me, I guess. After they had finished speaking, that's when the bell for lunch went off. All of the students walked out of the classroom after they heard this. But as Izuku and Tenya were making their way out, Aizawa had spoke up to them, which caught their attention. "Can you two stay for a moment?" The two boys glanced at one another and shrugged. Izuku and Tenya walked up to Aizawa and waited for him to speak. After a moment of silence, the pro hero did so. "So you all will have separate duties besides your already existing ones as students." He then continued. "Do your best." After they heard this, they both nodded. Tenya then made his way towards the cafeteria. But Izuku had caught something on the corner of his eye. It was a man wearing a black hoodie that covered his face. The silver-haired boy raised an eyebrow and followed after the man. How did he not get caught yet, Izuku thought. But the man had noticed the silver-haired boy that was following him and grinned. After he did this, however, said man had disappeared into the hallway. Crap! Izuku started to follow after the man, and as he was doing so he heard the school alarm go off. After Izuku had heard this, said boy had stopped his run and noticed that the door to the principal's office was open. He got into a stance and was about to enter, however, that's when the same man came out of the office while holding a paper. "You know they don't care about you," the man said calmly after staring at Izuku's eye. Izuku didn't respond, he just analyzed the intruder. He has red eyes with shaggy blue hair and his face looks pale. After the man noticed this, he chuckled. "You have the eyes of a monster boy." He then continued, all the while appearing at his side. Izuku's eyes went wide at this. "So fast. You know, I saw you on TV when you threatened that hero," the man chuckled. It was quite interesting to watch. Izuku growled and launched an attack towards the man that had a blue flow following after it. The man had noticed this and jumped back. But he was still grinning towards the silver-haired boy. "You see, after one taunt and you already attack me, I don't think being a hero suits you." The silver-haired boy growled and roared. "And what do you know?" As Izuku said this, he dashed towards the man and launched an attack that hit the ground. The man appeared behind him and started to laugh. He then spoke in a sadistic tone. "I know that you're Izuku Midoriya and you're yokai." After Izuku had heard this, he growled and his fist glowed purple. The man raised his hands up defensively and chuckled. Now I am not your enemy. But let's see how long you will play the so-called hero. Once you figure out how this corrupted society runs." After he said those words, a black portal had appeared behind him. And as this was happening, Izuku stared at him wide-eyed. The man spoke as he was being engulfed by the purple mist. "Know that my name is Tamura Shigaraki, and I will be seeing you very soon, Izuku Midoriya." After he said this, the man disappeared into the portal. What did he mean about the corrupted society? Izuku wondered out loud, however, that's when a voice could be heard behind him. "Midoriya, what are you doing over here?" The silver-haired boy cursed in his mind and turned around and saw Nizu and Aizawa staring at him in suspicion. Izuku then spoke up after a moment of silence. "I followed a man that was wearing a black hoodie here and engaged him, but he just disappeared." As he said this, the duo noted the crack on the wall and on the ground. Nizu then spoke calmly. "Did you see him carrying anything?" the chimera questioned. At Izuku's nod, Nizu frowned. "I saw him holding a stack of papers, probably got it from your desk." Nizu hummed and thought. Why would they want to steal Class 1A's schedule for next week? However, after he thought this, Aizawa spoke up. "Alright, just head back to class and no fighting random villains, problem child." Izuku just nodded and walked back to said class. He looked down towards his hand and wondered. Corrupted society, does that mean the heroes aren't fixing anything? Time skip 1 week later. Izuku walked out of the changing room and noticed that Nina was waiting for him. Said boy raised an eyebrow at the girl and she walked over towards him. Once the pink-haired girl was standing in front of Izuku, she spoke up. Why don't we go to the mall this weekend? Mina asked with a grin. Izuku raised another eyebrow and replied bluntly. Are you asking me out to a date? As they were walking, the duo were making their way towards the bus where Aizawa had told them to meet. She grinned at him and gave him a thumbs up. Yes, I am. I want to get to know you more. Mina stared at him for any reaction and was happy that the silver-haired boy smiled slightly. Fine, but don't blame me if I bore you. The pink-haired girl jumped up in joy and hugged Izuku. Said boy froze once she did this and Mina had noticed this. She let go of him and said, Let's meet at the mall, that's by UA. At Izuku's nod she grinned and ran over to Toru. The silver-haired boy stared at the floor in deep thought once she left. Why did he say they don't trust me? Is it because of my past or because I am quirkless? However, he shook his head in the negative and muttered. That doesn't matter, I'm becoming a hero to protect those and protect her. As he thought this, Inko popped up in his mind. Izuku then continued his thoughts. She is the one who made this all possible for me, and I would do anything to keep her safe. The silver-haired boy froze and muttered. Wait, what did I mean about anything? However, as he was in his thoughts, Izuku was already in front of the bus, and his classmates were already going inside. And Aizawa was just staring at him blankly. Hurry up, problem child. Izuku just nodded and entered inside. He looked around and spotted a seat next to Mina. The silver-haired boy walked over to her and asked if he could sit beside her. Said girl just grinned and moved over for Izuku to sit down. Which he did so. Throughout the bus ride he ignored his classmates' talks and just stared at his hand in deep thought. Mina saw this and put her hand over his own. Izuku's eyes went wide and he looked over at Mina. Said pink-haired girl frowned and asked. Is everything alright? Yeah, I am fine, I was just startled. Mina just pouted at this and was about to speak once again. However, the bus had stopped and Aizawa had spoke up. Alright, everyone get out of the bus, we are here. After the class had heard this, they quickly stood up and walked out of the bus. Once everyone was outside, all of the students looked on in shock at the size of the building that was in front of them. As they were staring, the doors to the USJ had opened up. Then not a second later 13 had came out and greeted the students. Welcome everyone, I am the Pro Hero 13, and I own this facility. The Pro Heroine then continued. Now follow me inside of the building. As they did so, Izuku wondered why he got a bad feeling all of a sudden. He looked around and ignored the Pro Hero's speech. His keen eyes then caught a glimpse of the same portal from a week ago. The silver-haired boy shouted. Aizawa-sensei, that's the same portal from last week. After said hero heard this, he glanced down and was in deep thought. So that's why they broke into the school. Without a second thought, Aizawa jumped down towards the horde of villains that are appearing through portals. As he jumped down, Shota shouted towards 13. Protect the kids. Shigaraki stared at the students and pro heroes and started to scratch his neck. Where is All Might? He then continued, he was supposed to be here. Once Kurogiri had saw this, he spoke up. Yes, but this is also a golden opportunity to kill some of the students. After Tamura heard this, he looked over towards said students and locked eyes with Izuku. He grinned and spoke. Kurogiri, bring out the two Nomas, and when you teleport the kids, bring the one with the red eye to my feet. Kurogiri nodded and did as he was told. Once the Nomas had appeared by Shigaraki's side, he teleported away. Tamura then stared at the smaller Nomu that had enlarged fingers. Let's see if he recognizes you, he said with a dark chuckle. As this was happening, Kurogiri appeared in front of the students and spoke. Greetings, I am Kurogiri from the League of Villains. However, as soon as he appeared, 13 activated her quirk and pointed it towards said villain. I will protect the students, everyone go to the exit. Kurogiri saw them moving towards the exit and spoke while being pulled into the black hole. You know there is a reason why you are a support hero. However, before he could launch his counterattack, Izuku had appeared by the heroine's side and tackled said hero to the ground, all the while narrowly avoiding the attack that destroyed the ground she was standing at before. 13 looked over towards Izuku and spoke meekly. "Can you please get off of me?" The silver-haired boy raised an eyebrow at the meek voice and did as asked. As he did so, Kirojiri stared at him in shock. That boy was able to figure out what I was going to do. After he thought this, he put a portal below Izuku and said boy noticed it when it was too late. The silver-haired boy tried to jump out of the way, but it quickly enveloped him. Kirojiri then turned his attention onto the teacher and students. Now who is next? With Izuku. Said boy landed onto the ground with a thud. But as he did, the silver-haired boy heard Tamura's shout. "Nomu, restrain him." Izuku tried to move out of the way, but the Nomu tackled him to the ground, which cracked it and left a boom. Tamura grinned and waited for the smoke to clear, and he chuckled once it did. There Izuku was pinned onto the ground with the muscular Nomu above him. Said creature had both of Izuku's arms in a lock, and has its legs above the silver-haired boy's, which pinned them down as well. "Why did you trap me like this, coward? Fight me." Izuku said with gritted teeth. He was trying his hardest to get out of the grip, but to no avail. Once the villain leader saw this, he chuckled and bent down, now being at eye level with the boy. "I'm not going to attack you, I just want you to watch." As he said this, Tamura looked over to the other Nomu and gestured it to come here. It did so, and once Izuku noticed its enlarged fingers, his eyes went wide. "Wait, that's Nagai Tasaki's quirk." When Tamura saw the look of recognition on the silver-haired boy's face, he grinned. "Oh, you recognize him already? I'm pretty sure he is the one that Bakugo kid hanged around with." He then said mockingly. "So did you." Izuku roared and tried to break out of the grip, but the Nomu put more pressure on his arms, in which a crack could be heard. The silver-haired boy gritted his teeth at the pain and roared. "Weren't you the one who told me that this society is corrupted? It's like this, because of people like you." As this was happening, Aizawa had tried to make his way over towards his student he had saw when Izuku got teleported. "Move out of my way." Shota roared, and as he did so, Eraserhead launched a villain into a group of 10. After his attack made an opening, said teacher dashed towards Tamura and Izuku, all the while preparing his scarf for an attack. Tamura had noticed his approach and chuckled. "Nomu, go attack him." Izuku stared at Tamura in shock. Is this what he meant to watch? After he thought this, the smaller Nomu dashed towards Aizawa and cut his scarf with its sharp fingers. Aizawa dodged one of its claws and tried to launch a punch towards the thing's head. However, said creature dodged to the side and punched Aizawa in the face, which sent the hero back towards the crowd of villains. "What, I erased its quirk, how is it so strong?" As this was happening, Izuku roared. "Stop it." The Nomu put more pressure on Izuku and tried to grab the boy's head. However, the silver-haired boy let out a battle cry and smashed his head onto the ground, which had a purple trail following it. Boom! Once the Nomu on top of him moved slightly, Izuku shouted in rage. "Whirlwind Water Stream, Cross-Fong Dragon Slayer Fist." He launched his free arm towards the chest of the Nomu and sent it flying with a boom. Izuku ignored the pain and dashed towards the Nomu that Aizawa was fighting. Said hero was about to be pierced in the chest, but that's when Izuku appeared at the side of the thing's head and launched a kick. Said kick connected and launched the Nomu into the ground, which made impact with another boom. Izuku huffed and glared at Shigaraki angrily. "How dare you toy with the lives of others?" As he said this, Izuku barely noticed the Nomu beneath him twitch. Aizawa had launched his scarf towards Izuku and moved him out of the way. Not a second later, its fingers grew and got launched towards the silver-haired boy. One of said fingers had pierced Izuku's shoulder, in which the boy cried out in pain. Shota moved Izuku to his side and unwrapped him. "Leave this one to me, go try to leave with the others." However, as he said this, the Nomu that had pinned Izuku rushed Aizawa and launched a punch towards the pro-hero. Said hero put his guard up but heard a crack. When the punch connected, Izuku cried out in pain and got launched towards the edge of the staircase, in which he landed with a boom. Izuku stared on in shock at the crater that his teacher was now in. However, he quickly turned his attention onto Shigaraki and roared, "I don't know what you want with me, but I will not change my path." As he said this, Izuku dashed towards the man, but Tamura didn't even put up his guard. The Nomu with enlarged fingers appeared in front of the silver-haired boy and launched continuous attacks towards him. Izuku dodged, but when he had moments to attack he was conflicted. This was one of my friends, that I knew since I was little. He gritted his teeth and kept dodging the Nomu. After Shigaraki saw this, he chuckled and shouted, "What, don't want to fight your friend? Didn't you destroy its head earlier?" After he said this, Izuku gritted his teeth and roared, "Whirlwind, Iron Cutting Fist." He launched his punch forward and pierced the Nomu, in which it got destroyed into 3 different pieces. "No, that thing isn't my friend. Tasaki died when he was turned into that thing." Tamura laughed in joy. "See, you already killed someone. I was right, you aren't fit to be a hero." Izuku shouted back in protest. "He was already dead, no point in trying to guilt-tripping me into joining you." After he said this, the other Nomu appeared behind Izuku and launched another punch towards him. Said boy turned around and couldn't dodge in time. What? Boom! The attack connected and sent Izuku flying towards the edge of the water zone with a thud. Tamura stared at his Nomu and frowned. "I didn't want it to kill him." He was about to mutter something, but that's when Izuku stood up. Tamura stared at him in shock. Izuku was now bleeding throughout his whole body and his hair is covering his eyes. He then rubbed his hair furiously and roared in defiance. "I won't lose." As the now silver red-haired boy did this, Izuku launched a punch towards the ground which left a boom. Tamura jumped up and stared at Izuku in joy. "Now this is why Master wanted me to get him to join. He is a monster." As he thought this, the ground around Izuku had cracked and rose up. But that is the end of this part. If you enjoyed this part, leave a like and subscribe. Also tell me in the comments on how this part had came out.